All right, here we are with Jimmy Neary, up Sligo, right?
You got it right, yes.
So you came to America in 1954.
Yeah, I was a shop boy in Tuppercurry where I was born. I was an apprentice in a drapery store, but the man had a beautiful bar, and I wanted to get in there. So eventually got in because I always wanted to be a bartender. So I was working in Eddie Galler's in Tuppercurry, and I came home for lunch, and there was a lady visiting my mother, Annie Galler. I never saw the woman in my life, but I knew her brother. He lived down the road down where we live. And she said to me, "Would you like to go to America?" And I says, "I would love to go to America." And she says, "I will sponsor you." So anyhow, I got up on my bicycle and I cycled back into work after lunch, forgot all about her, but she did not forget about me. A month later, I got the papers from Annie Gallagher, sent them up to Dublin, got called to the American Embassy for my interview, passed the health interview because everybody had to go through medical. And first of all, you had to have a sponsor, and she was mine. And anyhow, it turned around that I passed the test, and then she told me, the man that was interviewing me, told me I had to put my hand on the Bible and swear that within 90 days after going to the United States, I would register for the draft, and it's called CERT, which I did get called after I was here a year and a half. But leading up to that, my first job in America was a porter at the swimming pool in the New York Athletic Club. That's where I started, and I worked from 7 in the morning to in the afternoon, 6 days a week, and I got $27. 3 weeks later, Peachy had a beautiful restaurant, and he was a member there, and he gave me a part-time job from 6 evening till 12 at night, 6 nights a week for $24. So from 7 in the morning till 12 at night, I got $51 a week. 9 months later, I'm up in East Durham, it's an Irish resort area in the Catskill Mountains, and my brother called on the phone. There was no cell phones back then, but he called Tarpey's, the house I was staying in for the weekend, and he told them to tell me, come on back home. I had just got my draft call to the United States Army. So I got drafted into the Army. I did my time in the Army, finished it, I was a tank driver, and I came back home to the Bronx, and then, what did I do? Actually, I came back, the same 2 jobs, because you were guaranteed your job. You had to keep your job for you. And 9 months later, Peachy gave me this part-time job, which, I've already said that. But let's see.
Your stories are good. We like hearing them a second time.
What's that? Yeah.
So you came here in '54. You were in the Army for a couple years later on. And then what happened in 1967 on St. Patrick's Day?
In 1967 on St. Patrick's Day, I was a bartender at Moriarty's. Brian Mulligan and myself, we were both bartenders there. We saw an ad in the New York Times on a Sunday morning. We met the man on the corner of 57th Street here, looked at the place, and we put down $500 holding on the place. And then we opened on St. Patrick's Day, 1967. Neary's on St. Patrick's. That became Neary's because of a toss of a coin. Brian tossed the coin, I called heads, and it came up heads. So
but if it was tails, it would be Moriarty's?
No, it'd be Mulligan's, Brian Mulligan. It'd be Mulligan's, yeah. Because we didn't want to put the 2 names on. So I won out, and then Brian passed away of a heart attack in 1985. And in 1986, I had a landlord, the same landlord, his name was Mr. Sendell. He called me and said to me, I often said to him one time, will you ever give me a chance at the building? And he says, who knows, one day I might make a call. So the call came, and the amount was $1,375,000.
In 1986.
1986, which was a lot of money back then. But anyhow, I knew what I was paying down here in rent, and I figured if I could get half of that upstairs for the other 2 floors, I would be able to pay the mortgage. So I called the Bank of Ireland, and Bill Burke was the president of the Bank of Ireland. He gave me the money, I called Paul O'Dwyer, he was my attorney. He was afraid I was getting in over my head, so he put me on to his son Brian. And Brian came on and he says, what are you going to do? I says, I'm going to take a shot at it. He says, go for it. Called Mr. Senville back. He couldn't argue him because I had told him for so long. Yeah, and I says, I'll take it. Now I call home. I says, I leave. I didn't say any more. She
That's your
says
wife,
to me, yeah.
right.
She says, what did you do now? I says, I borrowed 1,375,000. She says, you did what? I says, I bought the building. She said, how in God's name are you going to pay for it? I says, I haven't the faintest idea.
Well, it's a good thing you did, because here we are, you're nearly 50 years old here.
Yeah, one more year and 1 month and a couple of days I'll be here 50 years.